Hello there. This is the second of two videos that Nick and I have produced as part of our review of the ProGauntlet by Crossguard. The first video you'll find in the description, or if you pop to the end of the video, you'll see a link sort of right at the end, which will also point to it. And in that video, we do a full sort of overview and review, look at the durability, the build quality, kind of the manoeuvrability and agility of the glove, fit and finish, all that kind of stuff. So if you're wondering, is the ProGauntlet any good? Should you consider buying it? Is it good value for money? That's the video to go and look at. But if you want to know, will the ProGauntlet work with a particular sword, then this is the right place. So I'm not going to be able to cover every sword, and it's not just going to be me as well. So what's going to happen is I'm going to flip between myself and between Nick, who is recording a separate section to test the gloves with his swords. Now normally we do this together, so we could sit next to each other and we could chat about it and we could try out all the different weapons together. But because of COVID, it's yet another thing that it's screwing around with. So it's a little jarring, but we've got all the footage. Hopefully it'll look okay put together, and you'll get a good idea as to whether a ProGauntlet will work, or will it even be usable in the kind of swords that you want to use. So I'm not going to cover every one of my swords. You can see my racks behind me are looking a little depleted, but there's still some left. I've got probably 8 or 9 swords I'm going to test it with, and as I said, Nick is going to do the same with his swords. So I think most of them will be covered. If there's something we missed, or there's a particular brand that you want us to check, let us know in the comments below, and we will either shoot another video with kind of extra swords, or we can just let you know, yes it works, or no it doesn't. Now I've got the gloves here. I'll just put the right on first. Most of these swords are going to be single-handed, but I will be trying out a couple of two-handed swords as well, just to make sure. Now you'll notice this is the glove that has the little rubber band here. This actually broke after 50 minutes. So unfortunately, oh, okay, the rubber band has just broken as I'm talking. So yeah, that broke after 50 minutes of sparring, which we didn't notice until afterwards. So the glove's going to be going back for them to look at. In fact, it's falling apart now. Okay, well this will be interesting, won't it? So I suppose I should get on to testing the swords before anything else falls off the glove. But yeah, they will be fitting a new part and or sending me replacement gloves. So less talk, more swords.
Let's just have a look at what swords we've got and what really fits. So a really common sword on the market for sidesword, one of the most common you'll see, is the Kvetun standard sidesword. It's the most common one that they sell. And no, it doesn't fit in there. And it doesn't fit for a couple of reasons really. One, the knuckles on the ProGauntlet are very large in terms of their height, and so they just don't fit into the finger rings of the Kvetun sidesword. And then the knuckles here jam up on the knuckle bow as well. So technically I can just about squeeze the glove into that sword, but my index finger gets stuck, I can't grip it properly, and then the sword kind of gets jammed in there as well. So I've tried it, and realistically no, this sword would have to have a significantly modified ring and quillen to make that fit. Now the one thing that does work quite well is the base of the thumb here. So when you grip a side sword, one of the massive problems with gloves is the base of the thumb, because say most gloves have a large base of the thumb pad section like this sparring glove 5-finger, and that interferes with this section here and it pushes the thumb away from the guard and makes it really quite uncomfortable. That's one area that the ProGauntlet actually works really well on. So it does actually sit really nicely into the base of the thumb, so that's really nicely shaped. But ultimately, because of the large fingers, I can't fit it in that hilt, so it won't work in that at all. And my Malleus, so that's one of the Malleus Martialis I, I think it's called. Again, I can kind of cram it in there, but the index finger constantly makes contact there, locks in position, and as do the other fingers as well. So I don't really have the mobility to use the side sword as it was really intended. So no, if you had a side sword with a bigger knuckle bow and bigger rings, then actually that would fit, and then the thumb would work quite well. But as it stands, a couple of common side swords on the market there, it doesn't really work for. Now, people have also asked about bull hilt sabres. So the Kvetun Easton is probably the most common bull hilt sabre on the market right now. Does it fit for that? Well, actually, yes, it does. And again, when I say fit, it doesn't just mean does it fit in the bowl, but does it fit in the bowl and allow me to use the sword as I want to and as it's intended to be used? Because you can cram almost any glove in any type of hilt, but it has to work correctly. So it does just about, it does snag and pull in a few places, and that is a concern for durability because my sparring gloves do that, and because they're hitting the bowl, they're pulling and ripping all the time, so that's a concern for durability. So yes, it does go in the bowl hilt, works fairly well, I would say. Obviously bowls on sabres are various different shapes and sizes, but as a result that does work. Incidentally, I'm using the left one right now because the right glove broke on the first day and it's currently just held together with this elastic band, so it doesn't look very, very pretty at the moment. So I'm showing you with the left hand. So does it work for that? Yes. Now personally, I wouldn't use a ProGauntlet for this hilt anyway. Something like a Red Dragon, particularly with a fingertip protector in the little finger, is just a better solution because the bowl does provide most of the protection for you. But I know people want to know, and they want to know, will the gloves work with it? So yes, pretty well. Here is a Kvetun Easton model, but with the 3-bar hilt in left-handed model. Absolutely no, it does not fit in this. So this is another problem you're going to find with slightly complex hilts, is that the knuckle back of the hand section is very large, and it just basically stops any movement into what is actually a fairly large hilt. There's just no way, it does not get in there. So no, on the Kvetun 3-bar. Now, onto an arming sword. So this it's a Black Fencer scout arming sword. It's got a custom quilling and stuff, but it's otherwise a standard model. That does fit. I mean, there's no surprise there. It's going to fit most arming swords quite well, although I do have some issues of grip mobility due to the inner grips. Talk about that in a bit. Slightly more complex hilted side sword. So this is a Black Fencer with more of a swept hilt. So that looks exactly like a rapier. Now this is actually a complex hilted side sword, but the hilt is exactly like a rapier. I definitely cannot fit, put the right hander on if I can. Not the easiest things to get on once you've got both, when you're trying to get both of them on. As you can tell, the very large knuckle section means that no, you're not going to get it in most rapier hilts. Now, you wouldn't put it in most rapier hilts, so that's not really a problem, but this, of course, is a meaty side sword, and therefore you are going to want a reasonably decent glove in it. Now, because it's a right-handed one, the left is much more open, so that can give you an idea of what it would look like using a more open hilt version, which Black Fencer do sell. So if you bought the Black Fencer side sword that has the standard simple guard rather than this swept hilt, you actually, yes, could use ProGauntlets with it. The fingers fit through the rings, they don't get jammed on the knuckle bow, and the thumb, as on all side swords, does sit really nicely. So if you have a side sword that has big enough rings here and big enough knuckle bow here, yes, it actually does fit, and then it becomes quite comfortable. So basically, right now, these aren't going to fit most side swords that people are using in terms of steel, but they will fit a couple that are out there, particularly, for example, the simple version of this Black Fencer.
So I'm going to get some stuff out of the way first that I don't know why people want to know, but can I use a ProGauntlet with a small sword? I don't know why you'd want to, but yeah, you can. You're going to look like a caveman using a small sword like this. You can get, depending on how you grip your small sword, you can get sort of 2 little fingers inside the grip. You can't really get 3. You can get kind of the fingertips through. Yeah, you can do it, but it's really not great, and it puts a lot of strain on the hand as well. Please tell me why you need this. If you're desperate to use a small sword with a ProGauntlet, it's really not the glove for you. But yeah, it sort of works, not very well. Schiavona. I'll be using this as just my sort of stand-in for a basket hilt. If you're using a basket hilt, I would generally recommend a glove that is sort of puncture proof to go inside there. So you've got the manoeuvrability and you rely on your cage for the most of the protection. The puncture protection is in case something gets through the gaps, because you should be protected against cuts. If you really want something extra, you can go for a bit of leather inside. Anyway, will the glove go in? No. ProGauntlet does not work with a Schiavona, and being as that's my favourite sword type, that's a big no. But then I would never expect to use a ProGauntlet with one. This is a Regenyei sort of bow hilt sabre. It's got really good protection from the front. It's like a medium tank with sort of good armour on the front. So yeah, it's nice and solid from the front, reasonable from the sides. Kind of your pinky is exposed a little bit down here. But will it work with a ProGauntlet? It'll work in a hammer grip nicely. And you can get the thumb on the back, but only if your hand was already pulled back into the back of the bowl, in which case it's quite easy to do that. If your hand is compressed into the bowl, then it's quite difficult because you've got this little point on the end of the thumb. But yeah, you can do it. It doesn't feel great, to be honest, but yeah, it will work just about with a Regenyei sort of bow hilt sabre. Will it work with the longsword? I'll pop the other glove on. I think we all know the answer to this. Let's face it, if the ProGauntlet doesn't work with a longsword, then the real question is what actually will it work with? So I'll take out the ceiling, and I can't actually see now because I've just been blinded by the lights. So yes. This is really, to be honest, what I think the ProGauntlet has been designed for. You know, say it's designed for all kinds of weapons, but in reality, it's a sword that's a sword. It's gloves that are optimized for things like the longsword. Now, on the longsword, you barely feel the protection getting in the way. You can have the hands right up next to each other. You can go down to the pommel. You can change between grips. Can bring it back around. So you can change between grips. You can, from here, go straight to half swording, and it feels really good. So in terms of grip, agility, manoeuvrability on a longsword, excellent. I wouldn't expect otherwise though. But if longsword is your thing and you don't mind the weight, great. Bear in mind that the tips, as you'll see in the other video, they do interfere with the feeling on the blade. So just something to consider. Right, next up, a Kvetun Rapier or Meyer Rapier. Lots of companies make these now, so I've just used this as an example. Of course, the Meyer Rapier is quite a simple side sword, so it should work with most types of gloves. Does it work? Yes, it does. So it goes in there. I can go in a hammer grip. Works perfectly fine. And can I put the thumb on the blade? Actually, I can't. So yeah, I can in theory, but actually, look. I say I can put my thumb on the blade, but it's not actually on the blade, is it? My thumb is hovering underneath it. So, now Meyer has lots of grip changes. So if I go from sort of here, and then I want to bring the thumb against the blade, it's not easy. If I twist it around, I can get it on there. It's okay. I'd say it's usable, it's doable. Not brilliant, but okay. Ooh, okay. I got a load of swords balanced very carefully on a chair, and they were sort of 50-50. Were we going to go on the floor? Not yet, but maybe in a minute. Right, next up, Black Fencer Side Sword. I forget which number this is. It is quite a weighty piece, this one. I used it last week with the ProGauntlet, and it made me feel like an amateur. Just the 0.5 kilogram of weight in this hand, coupled with the side sword, it felt more like I was using a basket hilt, a heavy basket hilt, than a side sword. Now, how does it actually fit? Look. It does fit, but all the plastic components interfere, so any kind of subtlety is lost the minute you grip this. If you grip it as in a hammer grip, like you're using just say a Meyer side sword, yeah, that works fine. But again, as with the Meyer, your thumb is just doing nothing. It's basically paying lip service to having the thumb on the blade. It's the side of the thumb really is going on there. You try and put the underside of the thumb on the blade, it's really difficult. If you want to finger the weapon, so you've got your 3 fingers here, pop a finger in here, the plastic components in the middle between the thumb and the forefinger do get in the way slightly. This finger here is rubbing up against the knuckle bow, and I can feel that. That's quite uncomfortable. Yeah, it's not nice. It's straining all different parts of the hand. I would say after a fight with that, I know what it's like because I've actually used it. It puts a lot of strain on the hand. It's not great. I wouldn't recommend it for that.
Let's go on to sabres. So for me, this is one of the most important things. For me personally, sabres and side swords, those are the things that we desperately need a heavy glove for. And I mean open hilt sabres like this and fairly open hilt side swords, because they both hit really hard. They have a little bit of protection, but not enough to actually protect you in, say, a red dragon glove. So, stirrup hilt sabre. Yes, it does fit. And Black Fencer have actually made the grips a whisker longer since this one, because this is one of the first generations. So it does fit. As you can see, it's a little bit tight, but it does fit. Can I thumbs up it? No, unfortunately not. So sabres of this period, sometimes they were thumbs up and sometimes they weren't. Sometimes they're more a handshake grip. Is that realistically, no, there's just not enough room because of the bulk of the thumb, bulk of the fingers. Is if you grip it more with a hammer or a slight handshake grip, yes, you can get away with it. I sparred with this sabre against Jordan, who was using the left glove because he's left-handed with the same sword. We had a good fun fight, and curiously enough, this is the sword that I found that Black Fencer worked best for. So I have tested this in sparring with sabre, side sword, arm-in sword, long sword. It's a good selection. This stirrup hilt sabre is the one that it works best for, and I suspect that's just because it kind of crams in without actually getting stuck like on some of the side swords. Now, if we go to a slightly more complex, so an 1803 Black Fencer, which just has a little bit more protection, but you still want a decent glove for, well, now we've got these slots that get in the way because the thumb is very, very bulky. So again, any kind of thumbs up grip, you can just, actually this one, because it has a slightly longer grip, you can get it in there. And therefore maybe the longer gripped production models of the 1796s you might fit. So actually that does fit better. So that's what it fits in terms of types of swords. I'm not going to show long swords because that's kind of obvious. You know it works for long swords. Now, what else to be said about the fit and comfort when it's actually on a sword? Well, I was actually really quite surprised to see these ProGauntlets have solid inner fingers. They have kind of a little bit of a gap, but actually when you're touching a sword, you're touching the plastic, inner plastic. So there is actually that between you and the sword. That's actually something I was really, really surprised to see, because with a glove that is all about mobility and comfort, and it is incredibly good in terms of dexterity, I would have thought it would have had really good grip, because that's really what you want out of a high quality 5-finger glove. And sadly, for me, that's where it really falls down, is that there's no contact with the sword below. And for manipulating especially things like sabres and arm-in swords and stuff like that, if your fingers tips aren't actually touching the grip of the sword, you're losing a massive amount of control, movement, dexterity, and that kind of thing. So whilst the movement of the glove is exceptional, the actual contact of the sword then is compromised by this inner plastic, and a little bit more sadly by the rubber bands. So there's rubber bands on these 4 fingers and more like a nylon strap on the thumb there. And that kind of pulls on the leather and is a slight more interference on the grip again, because that's how the leather glove is held to the outer shell. And that's something I was a bit surprised about as well. So that is a standard method for for attaching many gloves, inner gloves to outer gloves, but it's quite primitive, and I was really surprised to see that on what is on the outside a high-tech glove, to then see such a primitive inner solution, and I wasn't expecting that. Again, I was hoping for unrestricted grip on the inside of the hand, so nothing but the leather glove. So I was quite surprised to see that, and that you do feel that through anything where you want a good bit of mobility and dexterity. And so that's a little bit of a shame, but I think I could live with that. It's mainly the inner plastic on the thumb and all of the fingers, is that every time, say let's do a thumbs up grip there, well, my thumb is actually plastic. I'm just feeling through the glove onto the grip of the sword, so I have just not got actual contact to the sword hilt. And that also does provide some problems with the side swords. So if I can just jam it in there, where we typically grip side swords is the thumb on top of the index finger, but because they're solid shells, my thumb is just plastic onto plastic, and that's just a really strange sensation that you can get away with, but it just does not give comfort and basically feel as you would want through a glove. Normally you'd at least expect to have the thumb making contact with the other glove, so you've got some feeling through at least one of your fingers. So that was a bit strange for me. Okay, so that's shown you a selection of swords and how it fits with them. So basically it fits with some very open hilt sabres. It might fit with some ball hilt sabres. It's a real problem for quite a lot of side swords. Arming swords it gets away with, but then we have this issue of these solid fingertip inners, and for me that hugely compromises the grip on pretty much any sword. I mean, even when I was using longsword and katana, I was feeling that, and so that is a problem.
Good old standby, Black Fencer 1803 infantry sabre. It should work perfectly with us, shouldn't it? Look at the slightly oversized grip, loads of space, simply constructed grip. It should go on there fine, and it does. Yeah, it grips nicely. The leather glove works really well on the blade. Let's bring it back up. There's nothing interfering. What about the thumb? Yep, you can put the thumb on the back strap if you want, so you can use it as yep, you can flip between grips quite nicely. I'd say that works really well, but just bear in mind again, you're slapping half a kilogram onto the hilt of that sword. Oh, easy now, little fella. Stay there. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Right, the next up is the Black Fencer katana. This is really, really nice sword. I can't remember if we've done a review on this yet or not. But yeah, it is a really, really nice piece, and it looks very katana-ish. They've done a really nice job on the profile. The distal tape is good. Anyway, this is not a review of the katana. Forget that. I didn't say any of that. Okay, how well does it work with a katana? And obviously with a katana, with just Sabre offers relatively little protection. It's a very open, simple design. So how well is it can actually work? It's really nice. In the one hand or two, there's enough space. I put my hand right up against the Sabre there. There's enough space, so I can use it single-handed, and I can bring the hand back for striking as well. I'd say it's a katana glove. This is actually really good. Although again, put these gloves on, you're packing on a kilogram of extra weight onto your hands if you're going to go and use the katana. But yeah, it feels really good. Manoeuvrability, excellent. It's not going to impinge too much on your technique. And I already did a longsword, didn't I? Oh well, I've already got another longsword. I'm not quite sure why I put two on there. This is the SIGI King, which is a much bigger sword than I was expecting. There were three choices on the size, and I went for standard. I thought, well, because it'll be standard. But no, apparently standard is big. Then they do a kind of a short and then a really short. Anyway, it's a really nicely put together sword. Again, I'll do a review on that. And you look at the grip, it's a big grip. You can get three hands on this if you had a third hand. So yeah, it all works really nicely. Thumb grip. Yeah, because it's because there's so much space, you can actually get the thumb against it. So yeah, you can thumb grip it. You can change grip really quickly and grab onto the blade nicely as well. Yeah, it works really well with the SIGI King. So that's all looking pretty good. So I've covered small sword, sabre, side sword, long sword. I put a basket hilt in there. We tried it with a katana. I know Nick will try it with a variety of single-handers, you know, spadroons, sabres, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's a fair list of things to go through. The short version is, if it's an open-hilted weapon like a mesa or a longsword, it's going to work. You don't need to worry about that. If it's a sabre, it might work. If it's a side sword, it probably won't work. Even if you can get the glove in, the lack of play in the plastic sections of the glove means that you just can't get the kind of manoeuvrability that you'd want with a side sword. So I'd say most side swords are out. What else was there? That's it. Yeah, I think that's all of them. So if there's a sword that I missed, or there's a sword that Nick missed, pop it in the comments, and we'll let you know how it goes. These gloves, as you can see, because that band is gone, this sort of section lifts off, exposing all the inside. So it's going back, so we won't have it for a little while. When it does come back, we'll do some more reviews and let you know what we think. But yeah, the ProGauntlet, and it looks nice, handles well, it's heavy, it appears initially prone for wear and damage, and it works in some swords and not in others. So your sort of value may vary from these gloves. So yeah, let us know, and thanks for watching.